Hello, I'm David Breeden. I'm the Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, a historically humanist congregation, and this is Coffee and Wisdom. Last week and this week, we have been looking at the social gospel and the fallout and movement from the early 1870s through to today as we go along. Today, we'll be looking at really one of the largest parts of the social gospel movement as it moves from social gospel to social witness, and that is the civil rights movement. And I'm titling this one a slight of hand because there is a kind of glossy, full color picture, as we see here, of white and black people together marching along in their Sunday best. And yes, it's all about ecumenical Christianity, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it's not exactly that easy when we start looking at some details. First question is, what's the difference between the National Baptist Convention USA and the Progressive National Baptist Convention Incorporated? Well, if you look closely, you will see the difference, 1961 for the Progressive. The reason for that is that the National Baptist Convention, and this was an African-American church convention, they weren't quite progressive enough to accept what was going on in the late 50s and early 60s. And so the new association was formed. The Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Martin Luther King's father had been the minister for many years, belonged to the National Baptist Convention, and Martin Luther King Jr., when he was the minister at Ebenezer Baptist Church, it belonged to the Progressive National Baptist Convention. So they just weren't going to move fast enough, and so the younger folk created a new organization. If you notice in the little thing here, it says Romans 12, 9 through 21. Very quickly, those of you who don't quite know Romans 12, 21, 9 to 21 by heart, I'll quickly let you have a little sample of this. It says, let love be genuine, hate what is evil, hold fast to what is good, love one another with mutual affection, outdo one another in showing honor, do not lag in zeal, be ardent in spirit, serve the Lord, rejoice in hope, be patient in suffering, persevere in prayer, contribute to the needs of the saints, that's members of the church, and extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. And it goes on in this manner. Don't be haughty and don't think you're too wise and all of these things. And basically what it's saying is do good in the world and love your enemies. And this becomes a very important bit of the Christian scriptures to especially the Quakers early on, as we'll see. And then it is taken up a little bit later at the time of the Civil Rights Movement. So today I want to look a little bit at some people who were not quite on the Christian path, progressive path that you might think they were at first glance and the kind of narrative of the Civil Rights era. One person is Paulie Murray, 1910 to 1985. She was a lawyer, Episcopal priest, and coined the term Jane Crow to describe what the added problems of Jim Crow to Black women. She described themselves as having an inverted sex instinct. The term trans had not been invented at this time period, and so probably she was a trans person, but really couldn't express it, though she was trying to express it quite openly. She has become a kind of patron saint in the trans movement at this point. Again, Episcopal priest, lawyer, Jane Crow, and she invented the term. She said, I hold the status of several minorities. I cannot allow myself to be fragmented into Negro at one time, woman at another, or worker at another. So here you go, a woman who's really a person who is really trying to explore a lot of new intersectional oppressive ideas. Kind of forgotten to history. A person also kind of forgotten is Ella Baker, 1903 to 1986. You didn't see me, she said on television. You didn't see news stories about me. The kind of role that I tried to play was to pick up pieces or put together pieces out of which I hoped organization might come. My theory is strong people don't need strong leaders. And this was what she lived by in her organizing days. She thought that leaders are the wrong way to go for movements. It needs strong, interrelated people all working together. No stars out there. Well, that's why she's not a star. And again, probably unjustly forgotten at this point. She was instrumental in forming the SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. John Lewis was the chair. This was the group that was opposed to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. What's the difference? Well, the SNCC is a secular organization that's not claiming any kind of religious grounding at all. John Lewis famously was a little bit not religious, couldn't talk about it openly in the days in which he lived, but that was part of his personality and his belief system. So John Lewis becomes the leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that Ella Baker helped to form when she called a meeting to talk about that. So a little bit forgotten, but there you are. Probably the most unjustly ignored, but now back in the limelight a little bit, is Bayard Rustin, 1912 to 1987. He organized the first March on Washington in 1941. You may know that story, in which Theodore Roosevelt or Franklin Roosevelt says, no, we can't have a major march on Washington in wartime. You've got to stop this. And so he signed the Fair Employment Act that helped African Americans in employment during the Second World War. Rustin also organized to protect the property of the Japanese in internment camps. Again, one of those things from World War II that were kind of ignored for a long time. And his part in that is very little known, but he did go out to California to be sure that the property of the interned Japanese were not seized. He was also the secretary of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, a group that we need to talk a whole morning about sometime. The Fellowship of Reconciliation is still around today, called FOR. He was also a member of the Communist Party before the Second World War, and then an organizer for the Socialist Party USA, headed by Norman Thomas. In 1953, he was arrested and jailed in California for sexual perversion, and this caused him to be disappeared from public view because he was gay and a former Communist Party member, two things that were not acceptable in the public eye in the early 1960s. Now, disappeared is a little bit over revisionist history, as we will see, but one of his main contributions, you see him here walking with a young Martin Luther King during the bus boycott. He worked on the committee of the American Friends Service Committee, writing the pamphlet called Speak Truth to Power, a Quaker search for an alternative to violence in 1955. Yes, we still use the term speak truth to power today. This is where it comes from the Quakers. And this was the statement of nonviolence that is going to lead to the nonviolence that becomes so much a part of the success of the civil rights movement. In 1956, he trained Martin Luther King in nonviolence for use in the Montgomery bus boycott. And as they say, the rest is history, because the nonviolence of that is what led to the success. He also was the main organizer in 1961 of the Freedom Rides, often considered to be the first national attention that the civil rights movement really gets. And then, of course, the big one, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom of 1963. He was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2013 by Barack Obama. As I say, he didn't really disappear from the public eye quite as much as we might say so, because here's Life magazine from September 6, 1963, and the leaders, Randolph, and Rustin. So right there. So you're not real disappeared if you're on the cover of Life magazine, but there you have it. But these were the two guys who were responsible for forming that movement in 1963 that really is the kickoff for the civil rights movement. Notice here in the upper corner, flames of fury in Vietnam. That's going to be the next big tragedy on the American scene, but in 1963 wasn't yet making the headlines. Now, the other guy is Philip Randolph. Why do I keep saying Rudolph? 1889 to 1979, labor organizer, civil rights activist, socialist, and humanist. He was the American Humanist Association Humanist of the Year in 1970, and he signed the second Humanist Manifesto in 1977. As I've mentioned before, the first Humanist Manifesto was white, very overeducated men, very famously so. The 1977 Second Humanist Manifesto worked on really showing how broad the movement had become in humanism. So it is a sleight of hand when we see those color glossy pictures of dressed up Sunday preachers marching down the road. There were a lot of people behind the scenes who were not religious or were marginally religious, that really were the foot soldiers, shall we say, of the civil rights movement. That's what we've been doing this week, is talking about from social gospel to social witness, how the 19th century social gospel idea translates into mainline Christianity in the 20th century. And then we're going to look next week, in a short week, about where it is today and where it may be going. Thanks a lot for listening, and you can help us out by going to firstunitarian.org/donate. And we need your help to keep the voice of humanism alive and strong in the world. Thanks a lot, and I will sum up the week tomorrow. Thanks.